I never thought my life would turn into something that sounded like it came out of a drama series. But it did. And it all started with a secret, one that I kept buried for so long, hoping it would fade away. I was just a quiet, average student, always keeping to myself, never really standing out in class. But sometimes, life pulls you into things you never saw coming, and before you realize it, you're in too deep to get out without breaking something, or someone. It started during my final year of high school. I had a literature teacher, Mr. Harris. He wasn't like the other teachers. He was young, maybe in his early 30s, smart, charismatic, and always seemed to know exactly how to get students to pay attention. Everyone liked him. I guess that's what made it even harder to see the warning signs. He always said things like, "You've got potential," or "You think deeply, that's rare." At first, I thought he was just being encouraging. It felt good to be noticed. But then the compliments got more personal. And the way he looked at me, it changed. At the time, I didn't want to believe anything was wrong. I thought maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe I was just imagining things because I'd never had that kind of attention before. But then he started finding reasons to keep me after class, small things like reviewing my assignments or giving extra feedback on my writing. At first, I didn't mind. I loved literature, and having someone actually take my work seriously felt amazing. But slowly, the lines began to blur. One evening, I stayed after class longer than usual. The hallways were empty, the school nearly silent except for the hum of the old air conditioning unit. I still remember the look in his eyes as he stood too close. My instincts were screaming, but I didn't know how to react. I was frozen. I remember whispering, "Please, stop." But he didn't. What followed changed everything I thought I knew about trust and boundaries. It wasn't just about one moment. It was about how something that began so subtly grew into something I couldn't control. And the worst part? He was married. His wife was a kind woman who once came to school for a parent-teacher night, smiling and thanking everyone for supporting her husband. I still remember how guilty I felt just looking at her. This story isn't about revenge or exposing someone for the sake of drama. It's about what happens when power is used the wrong way, when trust is broken, and when silence becomes too loud to ignore. I never told anyone, not my parents, not my friends. Until now. Because the truth has a way of catching up with you, no matter how far you try to bury it. And just when I thought it was over, he showed up again. This time, outside of school. And that's when I realized, this wasn't just a mistake. It was something much darker. Something I'd have to face, whether I was ready or not. That day outside of school changed everything. I was walking home from the library when I saw his car parked across the street. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence, maybe he lived nearby, maybe he was waiting for someone. But then he rolled down the window and called my name. The way he said it sent a chill down my spine. Calm. Familiar. Like nothing had ever happened. Like we were still in that classroom, pretending everything was normal. I didn't answer. I kept walking, hoping he'd drive away. But he didn't. He followed slowly, car creeping beside me as if we were just two people having a casual chat. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. He finally stopped the car and said, "We should talk." Just those 3 words, and everything I had been trying to forget came crashing back. I remember mumbling something like, "I have to go," before turning down a side street and practically running home. The worst part? I wasn't sure if I was more scared or confused. Because deep down, I had questions too. Why was he doing this? What did he want from me now? I thought it was over when I stopped staying after class, when I started avoiding eye contact, when I kept my head down and just waited for graduation. But apparently, it wasn't over, not for him. Over the next few days, strange things started happening. I'd get messages from an unknown number, short, vague, just a "Hey" or "Can we talk?" I never replied, but I knew it was him. I didn't have proof, but I felt it in my gut. Then one afternoon, I came home to find a note slipped under the front door. It just said, "You don't have to be afraid." But I was. More than ever. I started thinking back to how it all began. The extra attention. The long stares. The subtle comments that made me feel special, chosen. I'd been so naive. At the time, I didn't realize how slowly the lines had been crossed. And I definitely didn't see the trap being set around me. He was careful. Always polite. Always with a reason. Never anything that looked suspicious from the outside. That's what made it so hard to explain to anyone. How do you tell someone that something's wrong when there's nothing clear to point to? When every moment could be written off as innocent, even though it didn't feel that way? But I knew I couldn't stay quiet forever. Something had shifted. And the feeling that he wasn't done with me yet, it kept growing. There was something more going on, something I didn't understand. And I was about to find out just how far he'd go to keep his secrets from being exposed. I started watching everything more closely, who was around me, who was watching me. I stopped walking home alone and changed my routes. I even deleted most of my social media. But somehow, he always seemed to find a way to remind me that he was still there. I began to question if I was overreacting or imagining things. Maybe I was just paranoid. But then I noticed something that confirmed I wasn't crazy. He had started talking to one of my closest friends, Mia. It started small. He asked her to stay after class for feedback on her paper. The same thing he used to do with me. Then he started complimenting her, offering to help with her college essays, giving her that same attention that once made me feel seen. At first, I told myself maybe it was nothing. But deep down, I knew the pattern. I saw it forming all over again, like a script he had already rehearsed with me. I wanted to warn her, but I didn't know how without sounding like I was accusing him of something I couldn't prove. What if she didn't believe me? The more I thought about it, the more I realized how trapped I felt. He wasn't just a teacher anymore. He was someone who knew how to manipulate, how to use kindness like a mask. And no one else seemed to notice. I started losing sleep, waking up in the middle of the night thinking I heard something outside my window. Every knock at the door made my stomach twist. I kept wondering, what if he shows up again? What if he finds another way in? And then there was the other side of things. His wife. I saw her again at a school event, smiling like everything was fine. She even made a joke about how hard her husband worked, how much he cared about his students. I wanted to scream. But instead, I just stood there, nodding, pretending like I didn't know the truth. I kept thinking, should I tell her? Would she even believe me? The weight of it all kept growing. I started writing things down, keeping track of every strange message, every time he appeared where he shouldn't be. Part of me was scared to speak up. The other part of me was scared of what would happen if I didn't. I felt stuck between two impossible choices: stay silent and let it keep happening, or speak up and risk everything blowing up in my face. But the moment that shook me the most hadn't happened yet. And when it did, I realized just how deep this all really went. Everything came to a breaking point the night of the senior farewell event. It was supposed to be a celebration, a night of laughter, photos, and final goodbyes before graduation. Everyone was dressed up, music was playing, and for a moment, it almost felt like things were normal. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I kept scanning the room, half expecting him to be watching from a corner. And then, just as I started to relax, I saw him, Mr. Harris, standing by the refreshment table, talking to one of the parents like nothing was wrong. Our eyes met. He smiled, calm and confident, like he owned the place. Like he still had control. I turned away, trying to ignore the tight feeling in my chest. But then I noticed Mia standing nearby, laughing with a small group of girls. And there he was again, slowly making his way toward her. My heart dropped. I knew that look. I had seen it before. I couldn't let it happen again. I moved through the crowd, pretending to be casual, but my mind was racing. Should I pull her aside? Should I cause a scene? I had kept quiet for so long, but now it felt like staying silent would only let it all repeat. Then, something unexpected happened. I overheard two other girls whispering near the lockers outside the hall. They were talking about him. Not just in passing, but sharing their own experiences. Different stories, same pattern. The late-night messages. The offers to help after school. The lingering stares that made them uncomfortable. And for the first time, I realized. I wasn't the only one. I never had been. My hands were shaking. Everything was connecting. This wasn't just some personal mistake or confusion, it was a pattern, a secret trail he had left behind, hoping no one would ever connect the dots. I quickly pulled out my phone, scrolling to the folder where I had saved everything. Screenshots. The note under my door. Anonymous messages. I hadn't shown them to anyone yet, but now I wasn't sure I could wait any longer. And just as I looked up, I saw him walking outside, motioning for Mia to follow. She hesitated, then took a step. That was it. My breath caught in my throat. I knew whatever was going to happen next, I had to stop it. But I wasn't sure what would happen if I did. I didn't even think. I just moved. I cut through the crowd, heart pounding in my ears, ignoring everything else around me. My only focus was Mia. She was already following him toward the side exit, where the hallway lights were dimmer and fewer people were around. I tried to call her name, but my voice caught in my throat. By the time I reached the hallway, they were gone. I rushed down the corridor, eyes darting around, adrenaline taking over. That's when I heard voices, soft, muffled, just around the corner. I slowed my steps and pressed my back against the wall. I could hear him. Calm, reassuring, using that same tone he once used with me. Then I heard Mia's voice. She sounded uncertain, like she wasn't sure why she was even there. I took a breath and stepped around the corner. Mia. I said, louder than I meant to. She turned, surprised. Mr. Harris looked at me, his expression shifting from calm to something colder. Can I help you? He asked, like I was the one doing something wrong. I need to talk to Mia. Alone, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't move at first. Then, with a forced smile, he stepped aside. Of course. Just be quick, he said, and walked off like nothing had happened. Mia looked confused, a little embarrassed. What are you doing? She asked. We need to talk, I said, pulling her toward the exit. Now. Outside, I told her everything. Not in full detail, but enough. About how he started with me, how he made it feel like I was special, and how I had seen him doing the same with her. At first, she didn't say much. She just stared at the ground, thinking. Then she said something that made my stomach twist. He messaged me last week, she said slowly. From a different number. Said I had talent, asked if I wanted help applying to a writing camp. That was his move. It was how it always started. I told her to block the number, to save the messages. She nodded, still in shock. But then she added, "You're not the only one who's told me something felt off. 2 other girls mentioned stuff. Weird texts. Late night replies. The pieces were falling together faster than I could keep up. I wasn't the only one. And I wasn't imagining things. But just as we were piecing it all together, another twist hit, hard. That night, when I got home, there was an envelope taped to our front door. No name. No return address. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a printed copy of one of my old school essays, the one Mr. Harris had given me personal feedback on. But written across the top, in red pen, were the words, "You don't know the full story. Be careful." My whole body went cold. This wasn't just about what he had done. This was about what he was willing to do to keep it buried. I stared at that red handwriting for a long time, heart racing. The words "be careful" echoed in my head like a warning I didn't fully understand. I kept asking myself, what didn't I know? What was I missing? He was clearly trying to scare me, to make me back off. But it also meant he knew. He knew I had started talking. He knew I wasn't staying silent anymore. And that made him nervous. The next morning, I made a choice. I took everything I had, screenshots, the note, the messages Mia received, and even the essay with the red handwriting, and I went to the school counselor. I expected to be brushed off or doubted. But to my surprise, she listened. Carefully. Quietly. Then she said something I didn't expect to hear. "You're not the first student to come to me about Mr. Harris." I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. "So why hasn't anything been done?" I asked. She looked me in the eyes and said, "Because none of them had proof. Until now." That day changed everything. The school launched an internal investigation almost immediately. More girls came forward, quietly, at first, but each with their own stories, some older, some more recent. One by one, the pattern became undeniable. The messages, the private meetings, the manipulative compliments. The same script, over and over again. Mr. Harris was placed on administrative leave while the investigation unfolded. He didn't come back to school after that. We never saw him again in the halls. But the real moment that felt like the world flipped was when I got home a week later and found a small brown package waiting for me. No name. Just a flash drive inside. I plugged it into my laptop, hands shaking. There were audio recordings, dozens. Conversations between him and students, ones he probably thought would protect him somehow. But there was one recording that didn't sound like him at all. It was a woman. At first I didn't recognize the voice. But then I heard her say his name. He promised me he'd stop. He told me it was just you. That it was only once. It was his wife. I sat there, stunned. She had known. Maybe not everything, maybe not from the start, but enough. Enough to be part of it in some way. I didn't know whether she had been covering for him, or if she had been manipulated, too. But it added a layer I never expected. The school passed everything to the authorities. There were legal steps I didn't fully understand, but I didn't need to. The truth was finally out. People believed me. They believed all of us. But the twist I never saw coming? A few days after he was officially removed, I got another message, this time from a private account. No name. Just 6 words. He wasn't the only one. And just like that, the story wasn't over. The message haunted me for days. He wasn't the only one. I kept reading it over and over, trying to figure out if it was a threat, a warning, or just someone messing with me. I didn't reply. I didn't even know if I wanted to know what it meant. But part of me already did. The truth was, once I stepped out and spoke up, I opened a door that couldn't be closed. What I had gone through wasn't just an isolated situation, it was part of something bigger. And maybe that was the scariest part of all. The investigation into Mr. Harris eventually led to wider changes at school. A new anonymous reporting system was set up. Teachers were required to attend new training sessions about boundaries and ethics. The counselor who believed me started leading workshops for students about recognizing red flags and knowing when to speak up. Slowly, the air at school began to feel different, heavier in some ways, but also more honest. People were talking, not hiding. And that alone made me feel like something had shifted for the better. As for Mia, she kept her distance for a while. I think she was processing everything, just like I was. But one day after class, she stopped me in the hallway and said, "Thank you for not staying quiet." It was short, but it meant more than she probably realized. After everything we'd been through, it felt like a full circle moment. Not closure exactly, but something close. I still think about the other girls, the ones who came forward, and the ones who might never have the chance. Not everyone gets believed. Not everyone finds proof. I was lucky in that way. But I also realized something important. Being the first to speak up doesn't mean you're the only one who saw the truth. It just means you were the one who couldn't carry it anymore. And about the message, the final one, I never found out who sent it. Maybe it was someone trying to warn me. Or maybe it was a reminder that this kind of thing isn't just one person or one school. It can happen anywhere. To anyone. That's what makes it so important to talk about. To pay attention. To believe people when they say something doesn't feel right. I'm not the same person I was at the beginning of this story. I used to think that staying silent protected people. Now I know that silence only protects the ones doing harm. The real strength is in telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. So if you're watching this and something about my story feels familiar, or if you've ever felt like your voice didn't matter, please remember this, it does. You do. Speak up, even if your voice shakes. Because your story might be the one that helps someone else finally find theirs. And for me, this is the end of one chapter. But I know it's just the beginning of something much bigger. 19.